as
Then
you
we'll
say,
flip it the other side, because obviously the brilliant thing here is the team that wanted him, G2, had their own reasons to want a jungler, didn't they? Which is they want to get rid of Jankos. And by the way, they've even done that in a really interesting way, where like they haven't just said like, look, we're open to offers, but let's see, maybe we keep him. They've sort of made it clear that like, look, we want him out. No matter this is like when they kicked Reckless. If people don't know, like I had heard behind the scenes from legit sources, oh no, we're kicking him no matter what. Like whether someone signs him or not, you're playing for G2 again. That's almost the weird vibe you get from this. And I've heard behind the scenes, like maybe they cater to Caps now. Caps runs the show. I mean, he's the obvious person left that you care about. So maybe he just doesn't want to. But this is what I can't handle. So at the same time, guys, everyone's talking about what a scum org G2 is. By the way, G2 trying to buy this guy for like that amount of money. Meanwhile, Jankos, who earlier this year, if you even go like 2 weeks into the summer split, everyone was still saying is the #1 Western jungler, easily the best in Europe. He's looked great in the spring. He's even having some Smurf games in summer. Right, this guy, now when he's going to be sold, right, supposedly the asking price is only €1 million. And everyone's going like, oh, they've got him in prison. This is fucked up, man. Like, first of all, he re-signed with G2 previously. He chose to be in this position. And then secondly, this is the maddest of all, right? So people are offering millions and millions for El Yoya, but we can't get 1 million for a Jankos that in this scenario is like 6 months removed or 4 months removed from being one of the best players in the West. Now we're all going to act like he's washed. That's a totally reasonable. By the way, I wouldn't at the beginning of the offseason, Monte, be putting my price much lower than that. I would wait and see, because in my opinion, someone buying Jankos is the last piece to make themselves like a championship roster. Like that's how you go right to the top. It's even a scenario where who knows what your mid lane is like. Maybe that makes your mid lane look like 1.5 times better next split. Like I think that's a piece that absolutely you can sell for that. And quite frankly, I'll just put this out there. For all this talk about G2 being a contract prison, first of all, don't tell me it's a prison when you get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to not play video games, you fucking imbecile. It's like my joke on Twitter, like Reckless reading through a copy of Gulag Archipelago going, they don't know how hard I have it. Oh, what's that? Another 100,000 this month. Yeah, put it in the back room. I'm not playing League at the moment. Give me a fucking break. And then secondly, I'll just throw this out there. The reason why it's so whack, because it's all anti-Carlos sentiment, by the way, that came way before this. It was mainly because of the perks and the Reckless moves where they were popular players and Carlos pissed people off with the way he dealt with them. Right, here's how you know it's just anti-Carlos sentiment. Which player ever did end up in prison in contract in G2? Reckless didn't. That's what happened. By the way, Reckless himself admitted on stream, Monte, that the reason he didn't get to a better team, like a non-ERL team, is because he didn't want G2 to make any money, and then they didn't want him to like go to certain teams. It's like, so he admitted he was being a twat as well. So I don't even know how people are sad about that one. And then secondly, you have the scenario where Mickey X was briefly in contract prison until they sold him to XL, which turned out to be like a career-changing move again. It seems, I mean, he's even coming back for fuck's sake. Guys, they all hate G2 so much. Mickey X is coming back a year later. Are you kidding me? And then how about Wonder? Remember that? No one wanted Wonder. That was not. He only went to Fnatic, the team we were told no one's ever allowed to go to because of Carlos and he even went to fucking Fnatic. Like all these players got sold to the teams, not necessarily that they wanted it first, but to top teams. And by the way, about the best teams in those scenarios you could have expected. So the real joke is this. I'll just flip it back. And this is where you're all going to be in a real quandary, because you're all going to think, yeah, but G2 is evil. Oh no, wait a second, you all love Fnatic. Mate, I actually saw, I'm not joking, comments that were like, I guess the only ethical org left is Fnatic. It's like, my God, they don't even know. They don't even know. They're just bad at being unethical, you morons. That's why they have to flip it that they're the virtue signals. Like, everyone's poaching. How do you think you got all your rosters for about 5 years we expect you? So here's the angle, Monte. I remember someone who was in contract prison for quite a long time. His name was Niski. He was in Fnatic contract prison for a whole split. He couldn't play. And then what do you know? He eventually got sold to Mad Lions and he was able to go to Worlds. So basically, if it was up to Fnatic, who knows? Maybe he never even went. So the joke is, Rogue does refuse to sell to people in Europe and sell to America for millions and millions. And deny people a chance, by the way, to go and make super teams on G2 and win everything. People like Fnatic do lock you in a contract prison and go, no, till they pay, you don't get out. Yeah. Meanwhile, G2 thus far has never locked anyone in contract prison as far as I can tell.
Yeah,
has anyone?
Yeah, it does look like they're going to be shopping Jankos around. And I think Jankos has said that he only gets about 40% of his salary if he's benched. But I don't really feel bad for him, guys, because everybody's like, oh, they should pay him his full salary, fully guaranteed. I'm gonna make some other arguments for you here. One of them is that Jankos is a very popular streamer, and I would imagine he can make more than money this way because he'll have 40% of his salary plus be able to stream full time, which will definitely get him above the 60%. He's a huge streamer, right? So it's actually probably financially beneficial for him to be full-time streaming while on a 40% rate. Secondly, for those of you who are arguing, the players should get paid 100% if they're benched. Let me tell you a story about Overwatch League where the players all had guaranteed money. Players routinely in Overwatch League would bench themselves because they didn't want to play and because they didn't want the pressure.
The team had like a losing record, it was going really badly. Yeah.
The players would start to bench themselves and the teams would be on the hook. And we could never, ever, ever say which players were benching themselves. We just have to be on broadcast when I was broadcast. Whoa, this guy's just not playing this week. And the teams never made any announcements and
by the
were
way,
never held accountable.
The maddest one, because I can say this.
So fuck anyone who says these players should have guaranteed money. It ruined like 2 years of the Overwatch
here's the worst
league.
one. The worst one, I won't say the name, but if you know Overwatch, you might be able to guess. The worst one was a guy benched himself and just went back to Korea while still getting all the money.
Yep.
That's mental. He wasn't even on the continent. Wasn't even sat in the other room, like waiting to come in. He was like, see ya, I'm off. So anyway, here's the other thing to say on that, Monty. Right? First of all, what does that even mean? Have you noticed? I said this years ago, I nailed it. The most annoying thing about people who know nothing about a topic is the word should. What the fuck does should mean? Right? Hey, guy who's making a team where you lose millions of dollars to put together one of the best teams in Europe so I can watch a really good match of a video game. You should just pay him more money. For what reason? You just should. I feel as though you should. Who are you again? Just a guy watching the game, but I think you should. And you know what? More than just I think you should, which is a perfectly fine and valid opinion for a pleb to have, you're a piece of shit morally if you don't. Morally? What moral precept have I violated? Just morally, you're just a piece of shit human being. What is this? What narrative are we coming up with here? Because think of this. Here's the checkmate, Jankos. If you're watching, homie, here's the checkmate, my dude. If it's 40% and that's so little, just tell us what the 100% figure is. As soon as I know that, maybe I feel sorry for you. Spoiler, I don't feel sorry for you if it was like 30K a month and then you got 40%.
Also, Jankos, at the same time, why don't you go ahead and tell us how many Twitch subs you get and what your revenue per hour of streaming to 15,000 concurrent fans is. And we'll do a little math for you, okay? We'll do it. So we'll calculate your per hour streaming money right now. We're going to multiply that by 40 if you're a full-time streamer. And then we're going to see if the 40% of your salary plus that number is higher or lower than 100% of your gamer salary. Should be easy, right? There you go.
Because another thing is, look, I'm actually going to do some content in the offseason with some like agents where I probe them and ask them some tough questions and give them their chance to say their part and give their perspective and all that jazz. Because one thing I'm really sick and tired of, Monty, I notice they all do this as well. Right? When they're talking about like a 27-year-old or 25-year-old pro, like years in the game, 3-4 contracts into the thing, getting paid millions of dollars, got an agent, by the way. You notice they never mention that part. Got an agent, someone who's literally full-time their job to negotiate his contracts, figure out what terms you care about, make sure you agree with these terms. I've got a lawyer here and everything. We all agree that we're all signed the same. No, what they make it sound like, Monty, is that in 2022, Jankos is a 16-year-old kid who just turned 17 tomorrow, and he gets taken into a bar by some shady G2 executive in a fucking raincoat who goes, come on, kid, sign on the back of this fucking lap, kid. I give you everything. I'm the devil. Like, that's not what's going on. The joke about this is, and this is my comment on Twitter, where the fuck are the agents of Reckless and Jankos? Let me know that right now. I want to see those guys coming out explaining what a bad deal this is. Because what's great is I can just reply to that guy, just as I did to this other guy on Twitter, and just go, okay, explain what you mean by that. What pressure did someone put on? Because someone was saying, like, they put pressure on people to not have an agent to join their org. Said, if you haven't joined their org, what pressure could they put on you? Madly radio silence. Like, oh, you mean they just said to you in words, please don't join with this agent? Like, there's so much fuckery on that topic, because that's the thing they always do, Monty. They always use the word kids. Because when you hear kids, you think of that 17-year-old who's like, oh, why, Dad? What's going on? Reckless, Reckless is like 10 years deep in the game, guys. Jankos has been a top player since 2014. It's mental, innit? I know. Look, like, at what point in time are these guys just innocent babes in the wood? The real thing that pisses me off is this, Monty. I've actually, for real, known top pro players that were friends of mine that I begged to take different terms on deals. Because I knew, oh, you're never going to handle these streaming hours, mate. Oh, come on, get a clause in your, literally, you're getting so much on this deal, take a bit less and ask for like a no trade clause or something. You can't be benched or something. And they were like, nah, I'll never be benched. I'm really good. They never do it. All pros do is this. I want the highest base salary. Base, by the way, a load of them will even turn down like great deals that are structured like quite fairly. If you don't make playoffs, you get less. But if you make playoffs, you get 1 times. They all want the guaranteed base money, and if they get that, they just wait. And half the time, the joke is they don't even know what the rest of their contract is. They never actually were listening.
Yeah, and look, I think that there's two different things that are happening here. So one of them is like, I think Reckless has been complaining more from, I haven't watched every second of Jankos' stream, but from the clips I've seen of Jankos
wasn't really like hardcore complaining. It was more just explaining what the situation is. More his fans that took it and ran with it,
Yeah, I actually haven't heard Jankos really complaining about it either. Like, I think he's just been very forthright about it. And it seems to me that his core desire is just to continue to play professionally. So as far as like calling Jankos out, I don't think, I think there's a point that we made. We're just using him as a
stand-in for any pro that complains about contracts in this scenario.
So let's be clear about Jankos. Like, I don't want to unnecessarily antagonize him. I think he's probably still making great money. I'm just saying, like, it's not, I don't think, too big of a deal in terms of a hit to his finances. But at the same time, I think one thing that would probably be helpful for players is having a cap on their buyouts. And that's something that can be negotiated within their contracts so that you don't end up in a situation, if you really want to play professionally, or you put a timer on the buyout, right? Where you say, after the buyout begins, it can be whatever you say it is for 3 months, but after the end of those 3 months, it has to go down to this cap or something like that, or it has to be reduced by X percentage. I think there are mechanisms you can put in place so that you can make sure your competitive career continues. Because I think we all want to watch Jankos play next year. He had a great year overall, and it's a bummer and also weird that this is happening with G2, frankly, because I don't think he was terrible by any means, and I think he was pretty instrumental in some of their success. I think part of this is that Caps just renegotiated a 3-year deal, and there's probably something with that. So Caps is now contracted through the end of 2025. That means that he is the centerpiece of G2, guys. They wanted to get him on a long-term deal before anyone else. I imagine that was extremely expensive, and also they either don't have money to maintain some of these contracts with some of these big name players, or Caps has said he doesn't want to play with them. Like, one of these things must be true, because otherwise it doesn't logically make sense why you would get rid of Jankos, and also potentially Targamas, who I think had a phenomenal rookie year. It seems like there are some weird other forces at play in what's going on with G2.
I heard the Targamas one is that Hans Sama wanted to play with Mickey, and that like they're reuniting that bottle, and that was why that move's happening apparently.
Fair enough.
By the way, the one I do want to pivot to is the Reckless angle, because I thought his was the silliest of all. Again, funnily enough, actually, if you actually listen to what the players are saying, by the way, they're not the ones complaining that much. It's more that when they drop, here's the problem. This is what stands are like. You know what they're like from the K-pop and Owl world, mate. You don't have to actually say, like, I'm really upset about this. You can just go, that sucks, doesn't it? And then they go, see, I could tell, because they're all like way too parasocially involved. They're like, I could see it was like breaking his heart inside, and I could, I knew that we had to speak on his behalf and stop this org. So basically, right, on the Reckless one, he said one of the stupidest fucking premises I've ever heard, where he said that if he was to get benched, his salary went down to 6%, Monty. But he admitted himself, are you ready? You'll love this. This is almost like comedy that you'd admit this yourself. He admits himself that he signed a shitty contract, and then he actually used the line, proving what I said earlier. None of it would have mattered if I'd have smurfed. You fucking idiot. You're signing contracts where it's only good if you smurf. What are you even saying out loud? Like, the dumb part about that is, like, if people don't know, bearing in mind that move was to replace Perks and make Carlos look like a G, you had G2 over a fucking barrel. I guarantee you Reckless could have gotten that up to like half or 25% or 40 or something. If that was his one condition and he was willing to take a little bit, like, he could easily have renegotiated that deal. That means Reckless, this is the point I was making about them not being innocent. You do know that when you get past, here's the thing people might not know, this detail might change something for some people out there. You know, when you get past the contract, do you know why they make you on some contracts an initial every page, guys? To show you've actually fucking read it. You're not supposed to do it like installing Windows, like, oh, scroll to the bottom of this, accept all terms. What the hell? How am I supposed to know? Like, this is a deal worth millions of dollars, and you're not even having either a lawyer read it, agent read it. You don't read it yourself and figure out what's going on.
There's a couple things here, right? Like, even if your agent, really wanted you to sign this, because if fighting back against this clause would lower your potential payment, right? So they could say, an org might say, for example, well, I'm going to pay you $1 million, and if you get benched, you only get 6%. But if you negotiate, they might say, well, if you want more of a guarantee if you're benched, then we have to lower your rate to 800K, right? And if you're relatively confident as a player or as an agent that they're not going to get benched, then you might not take the lower deal. Or your agent might, in fact, advise you to not take the lower deal because they get a higher cut of the $1 million, right? Or they get more money, the same percentage cut, but they get more money if it's $1 million. Now, there are two other things, or the second thing rather, is that if you have an agent, you should also independently have a lawyer to review these clauses for you and go over them.
Oh, no, none of them get that part, mate. They're all acting like their agent. They don't get, by the way, that at times, as Monte alluded to with the buyout, sometimes your agent can have a conflict of interest in this scenario where he might gain more from certain deals than the one that you want. And you think, well, he's just working on my behalf. Yeah, in theory, but sometimes there's just a crossroads, like you're saying, where they'll incentivize to go a different way.
Are good lawyers expensive? Yes, they are. But if you are a millionaire, paying a good lawyer $500 an hour, or whatever, $5,000 to go over your contract can be worth its weight in gold.
Nothing, mate.
Because you have to remember that in that relationship with a lawyer, you are the only client, and they're not going to get a cut of the contract. They are merely reviewing it and bringing up any problematic terms to you, in which case you can make a decision then in coordination between your lawyer and your agent and, the team you're negotiating against. So I don't understand necessarily why players don't do this. Maybe they did. Maybe they did do it, and they just have questionable lawyers, or maybe their lawyers were like, you shouldn't sign this, and then they signed it anyway. We can't know, right? We can't know.
I mean, in his case, as far as I know, like I said, he admits that he just signed a bad contract and just thought, well, that'll never affect me, which is what a lot of pros, unfortunately, do think, Yeah.
So this is all just industry stuff, and it becomes very silly. I agree with you. It is kind of funky that this continues to go on.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.